Watch this.
Idaho has taken another step toward reviving its Republican presidential caucus with its first official candidate. And it's one who has yet to come to Idaho to campaign. But he might change his mind once he hears how much money he'll save. Idaho's abortion law is pushing Idaho's maternal doctors out of state. But a few that are left are fighting what they are calling an ambiguous ban in court. When the government makes a mistake, it can cost taxpayers a lot of money. In the case of a wrongful conviction, it's now going to cost Idahoans hundreds of thousands of dollars. Idaho's Republican Party just got $50,000 to help pay for their March 2024 presidential caucus. The state GOP announced yesterday they had their first filing by a candidate to be considered in that caucus. Surprise, it's the guy who took second the last time there was a competitive field on the Republican ticket. Former President Donald Trump sent in his declaration of candidacy to the GOP headquarters Monday, and he paid the recently required $50,000 filing fee to do it. And I know, it seems like a lot of cash to print a name on a piece of paper, especially when you consider before this summer, the filing fee was just $1,000. Well, a lot has happened since then. In an effort to save the state nearly $3 million by getting rid of the March elections, the legislature accidentally eliminated the presidential primary last spring. So in an effort by party leaders to remain relevant in possibly picking the next presidential candidate, the Idaho GOP was forced to adopt a presidential caucus, which they planned for next March. It's an event they reinstalled at their summer meeting in June when they also imposed that stiff fee to file. $50,000. Well, that made us curious about what other states might charge candidates to be on their ballots. And right now, Idaho is tied for the highest. The numbers range from nothing, just a collection of signatures, to $50 in Oregon, to $500 in Colorado, to $1,000 in places like New Hampshire and Kentucky. Mississippi, they charge $2,500. South Carolina has historically been the most expensive. They used to charge $40,000. But this election cycle, they're going to charge $50,000, just like Idaho. They say it's because of inflation. However, South Carolina state law requires the parties each pay $20,000 per candidate to the South Carolina Election Commission, which runs the state primaries. Not so in Idaho. With the elimination of the presidential primary altogether, any party that chooses to hold a primary or a caucus must pay for it themselves, thus the $50,000 filing fee. And according to the rules the party passed in June, at least half of that money will be shared among the 44 county central committees to offset the costs of conducting the county caucuses. How much a county gets to cover the cost of the caucus is going to depend on how many registered Republicans are in each county. And any funds left over will remain with the Idaho Republican Party. But there's also a chance they may not get all that money because the GOP rules contain a rebate clause. If a candidate comes to Idaho at least once for a campaign event before the caucus, they're going to get half their filing fee back, which means the man who loves a good bargain, who wrote a book called The Art of the Deal, could get a deal on his filing fee. $25,000 back in his pocket if he gets Idaho soil on his shoes. Which is something Mr. Trump hasn't done, like ever. At least not while he was in politics. Didn't do it leading up to the 2016 campaign when he lost to Ted Cruz, or 2020 when he won with 94% of the vote here in Idaho. Well, so maybe the GOP can count on keeping all of that $50,000. But the question is, will $50,000 be enough? Which is probably why Idaho GOP chair Dorothy Moon, wrote in that statement to the press, quote, "We're looking forward to receiving additional declarations of candidacy from other Republican presidential candidates and a spirited campaign leading up to our March 2nd caucus." I mean, there's a possibility a dozen filing fees are out there. Candidates have until February 11th to file to be on the Idaho GOP caucus. Of course, all of this goes away should lawmakers reconvene for a special session to reinstall a March primary, and they have until October 1st to do that.
Make sure that doctors know where the lines are because they felt uncomfortable with some of the fluidity, and that's what this bill was a result of.
What are those key factors that you wanted clarified?
How close to death do you need to be before you can intervene? Do you need to be exsanguinating on the floor, being coded, septic in the ICU? How close to death before you can act.
Do you think you'll ever get to a point to where maybe Idaho's not for you if this continues?
It has crossed my mind many times. We will see where the future goes.
When Republican Representative Megan Blanksma tried to fix Idaho's abortion ban back in March to make it more clear when the procedure would be acceptable, we asked Dr. Lauren Miller, a maternal fetal medicine specialist, one of just 9 in Idaho at the time, if that fix would be enough. She said then it wasn't. We now know that lack of clarity in the law helped Dr. Miller make up her mind. Since that interview, she has moved her practice to Colorado as a direct result and response to the Gem State's ban on abortion. We also know she's not alone. Multiple doctors have told us directly Idaho's laws are stopping them from doing their job the way they've been trained. And at least 2 of them are taking their concerns to court. The Center for Reproductive Rights filed a lawsuit against Idaho on behalf of 4 patients and 2 doctors. The problem? Well, the same as it was last legislative session. They say the line dividing a medical emergency from a felony is still unclear. Andrew Bartline explains.
Signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay.
What's written in here
Motion is carried.
on paper plays out there in practice.
That's why I'm here today and suing Idaho over these bans.
Jennifer Atkins isn't alone. Today, she and 3 other mothers are plaintiffs in a lawsuit against the state of Idaho, alongside 2 doctors.
They told me that my baby likely had Turner syndrome, a fatal deletion of one of 2 X chromosomes in a female fetus. We were told that if I attempted to carry my pregnancy to term, I was likely to miscarry. I was at risk for a condition known as mirror syndrome, extreme swelling and high blood pressure, all life-threatening.
Out there, one might call it a medical emergency, but on paper, it's not.
So who will be there to care for us when and if this happens again?
The lawsuit argues Idaho's abortion ban put multiple women in danger by preventing local doctors from providing abortions to treat their unsafe pregnancies.
Following my abortion in the state of Oregon, my emotions were all over the place. I was grieving the loss of my daughter, and I was also angry that this is our story.
A story that's familiar to Dr. Emily Corrigan.
Now, there is still widespread confusion in the medical community in Idaho about in which circumstances abortion care is legal.
And even with their best judgment, doctors say the confusion isn't worth the risk. It includes a loss of medical license, up to 5 years in jail, and at least $20,000 in liability.
In my decade of medical training, I was never taught how to sort out vague laws that were not written using medical terminology.
Welcome to House State Affairs.
House Majority Leader Megan Blanksma aimed to correct those concerns last legislative session on paper. The removal of a dead child and ectopic or molar pregnancies are now legal in Idaho. So are abortions for rape with a police report, incest, or a doctor's medical decision to, quote, prevent the death of the pregnant woman. It's a standard that in practice
is an impossible ask of physicians.
Doesn't translate to black and white.
This simply cannot stand.
Gail Deedy is their lawyer.
The Idaho Constitution guarantees Idahoans the right to safety and the right to life. These bans and that language are endangering people.
But entirely legal. Earlier this year,
Outlines against or for abortion?
criminal and civil abortion bans earned standing with the Idaho State Supreme Court. The majority opinion summary said in part, quote, if the people of Idaho are dissatisfied with these new laws, they can elect new legislators. But the state, too, already has to recruit new doctors.
We have lost 5 out of 9 maternal fetal medicine specialists.
A bad look on paper.
It isn't safe to be pregnant in Idaho.
A bad outcome in practice.
I can't stop worrying that the same thing could happen to any one of us, to you, your sisters, your wives, daughters, and friends.
Dr. Corrigan added she knows 19 OBGYNs that have left Idaho within this past year. They were unwilling to wait for the next legislative session for the next chance to fix their concerns with the language of Idaho's total abortion ban. It's the language they use to call that law. We already brought up the state Supreme Court ruled Idaho's laws Idaho's laws are legal, I should say. So that's the point, Brian. Like, what makes this different if the Idaho State Supreme Court already said these laws are legal?
Exactly.
What they're asking the court to do is look at this medical emergency clause. What is a medical emergency? How close to death do you have to be? At what point can a physician perform an abortion as a medical procedure? Just saying that it can be used to prevent death of the mother, the doctors say that's not what we do.
Where's that line? Exactly.
And that's what Dr. Lauren Miller told us when we talked to her earlier this year. She's like, my job is to promote the health of my patient, not just prevent death. And so that's what they want to hammer down, is get the court to tell them exactly what this means, exactly where that line is. That's their ultimate goal with the lawsuit, is not to stop the law, strike it down, just show us where the line is.
So there's a little nuance to it. It's not like to overturn the law, but just give us some clarity on this. Help us understand where we stand.
Exactly, because right now they say if there is a patient they have that has a pregnancy that is likely not to survive, and it is a health risk to the mother, is that preventing death? How close do you have to be? Is the mother going to get sick? Are they going to get hurt? I don't know. I'm not risking a felony.
Okay,
Oregon's down the road.
I was going to say, because right now it's in the hands of the doctors, and they have to decide for themselves whether they want to face that. Okay, thanks, Andrew. We'll keep an eye on that one. Freak Alley is getting a fresh coat of paint. Meridian is getting a fresh fire station, and somehow 8 people survived a rollover crash 100 feet down an embankment. Here's Abby Davis with the 411.
8 people were hurt on Sunday when the pickup they were riding in went off the road and crashed down an embankment. It happened on North Pine Featherville Road, south of Pine, near Lime Creek. Idaho State Police says the GMC pickup fell 100 feet. 5 adults and 3 kids were in the truck. All of them were taken to the hospital by helicopter, and ISP says they're all going to be okay. Gas prices in the Gem State are down a penny, but they're still more than $4 a gallon. The average cost for a gallon of regular unleaded gas across Idaho is $4.15. Around the nation, drivers are paying on average $3.83 a gallon. AAA Idaho says higher than expected demand and crude oil production cuts are keeping prices up. Freak Alley is getting a fresh look. Several artists are spending the week putting up new art at the Outdoor Gallery. It's between 8th and 9th Street and Bannegan, Idaho in downtown Boise. Artists will be there all week, so stop by and check it out. To deal with all the growth Meridian is experiencing, a new fire station officially opened today. The new station will help increase response times on the south end of town. And for the first time, the Meridian Fire Department is partnering with Ada County paramedics. The paramedics will rent a portion of the building, and a unit will be stationed there. Both Ada County paramedics and the fire department say the partnership will improve collaboration and get both agencies to the scene faster. That's the 411 for the 208. I'm Abby Davis.
He was sentenced to 7 years in prison for failing to do something he wasn't really supposed to do in the first place. Getting exonerated after a conviction certainly comes with its share of emotion from all over the spectrum. But in Idaho, it also now comes with a six-figure settlement. It's a law that's been on the books for just a few years, but it's already been used to make up for mistakes in our justice system a couple of times. Joe Paris tells us the story of the latest and third time Idaho has had to pay out because of the Wrongful Conviction Act.
An Idaho man has been awarded over $319,000 from the state after being exonerated for a wrongful conviction that happened in 2017. Joseph LaCroix was convicted back in 2017 for failing to register as a sex offender. He was living in Bonneville County at the time. A judge sentenced him to a 7-year prison sentence. However, earlier this year, an Idaho court vacated his conviction. They found that Mr. LaCroix never needed to register as a sex offender in Idaho. LaCroix's original sex offense happened when he was a juvenile in the state of Oregon in 2002. Court records show that the case ended with a juvenile adjudication. The district court says that, quote, because LaCroix was a juvenile at the time of his Oregon offense and because LaCroix was charged and adjudicated as a juvenile, he was never convicted of a crime. So, because LaCroix was never convicted of a crime in Oregon, he didn't meet Idaho's requirement that would legally require him to register on Idaho's sex offender registry. Court records show that LaCroix was incarcerated for about a year, from 2017 to 2018, and he was released for a short time on probation, but was reincarcerated on June 20th, 2018. That June 20th date is interesting. 5 days later, the Idaho State Police sent LaCroix a letter telling him that they reviewed his file and determined that he did not meet criteria to register on the Idaho Sex Offender Registry. A crucial letter with a major conclusion. However, LaCroix didn't get the letter at the Pocatello, Idaho address it was sent to at the time. Court records indicate that the state of Idaho and the presiding judge in LaCroix's case had no knowledge that this letter had been sent. In 2020, LaCroix and his legal team moved to have his conviction thrown out. They argued that Idaho never had the jurisdiction to convict him of a felony, and his motion included the newly discovered letter from Idaho State Police. In March of 2023, an Idaho court dismissed the criminal case against LaCroix, the felony for not registering as a sex offender in Idaho, and they vacated his case. After his conviction was overturned, LaCroix filed a petition under Idaho's Wrongful Conviction Act, a 2021 law that provides for compensation when the justice system misses the mark. This is now the third time it's been used. LaCroix formerly sought a certificate of innocence and compensation from the state of Idaho. The state determined that LaCroix qualified for compensation under the act. It gives LaCroix up to $62,000 a year per wrongful imprisonment. Based on the time he spent incarcerated and on parole between his 2017 conviction and 2023 exoneration, LaCroix is now being awarded $319,297.74. as well as several $1,000s in addition to that for his legal fees throughout the years. So next week, the Board of Examiners will take up the payout. And Brian, this is kind of expected to be a formal, I guess, board meeting there. And the Board of Examiners, if folks at home don't know, some of the top officials, including the Secretary of State, the AG, the governor, so they'll basically look at this, say, yep, cross the I's, dot the T's, and then they will likely make that payout. Very interesting. I know what some people at home might be thinking. $319,000 does not seem like a lot of money for 7 years in prison, or a sentence of 7 years in prison. I assume, though, this is why the legislature passed this law, to avoid these arbitrary numbers that get handed out by courts for wrongful convictions. I mean, because if it's not in state court, you know, if it's not in state statute of what does the state do in this situation, then you can have legal teams that are suing for a lot more money, and then it would be up to a judge in a court of law to figure out, okay, well, how should they be compensated? So a few years ago in 2021, when they passed the Wrongful Conviction Act, I remember talking with Charles Fain and his legal team at the Capitol. They said, you know, this doesn't make up for what happened, but this payout, I mean, it was a big step, and I know there's a lot of pushing pre-2021 to get this passed. So now that we see it in action, this is how it works. All right. Thank you very much, Joe.
All right, another hot late summer afternoon. Warm, maybe. We'll go with warm. 85 degrees in the city of Trees right now. Not quite as hot as we were at this point yesterday, but still, that is above average for the middle of September. The rest of our evening looks really nice at sunset right at 8 o'clock, still at 80 degrees. By the way, this is our last 8 o'clock hour sunset of the season. Tomorrow it's 7:58, so maybe enjoy those few extra minutes of daylight today. We do have some storm activity in the Central Mountains and far southern Idaho. Some strong storms developing just south of Twin Falls. All of this out ahead of a dry cold front that will come through late tonight into the early morning hours. So no precipitation really associated with this front, but we will have gusty northwesterly winds tomorrow and dropping temperatures. So if you're ready for a little taste of fall or maybe more typical mid-September weather, tomorrow and Thursday are for you. So breezy tomorrow, but 81 degrees with lots of sunshine as that front moves across the Gem State. The sunshine sticks around, and then we warm up with highs back to 90 degrees for the weekend.
Why do 3 senators from Illinois, Connecticut, and Massachusetts care about what happens in Idaho? Well, apparently they're opposed to the University of Idaho's purchase of the University of Phoenix. And Senators Richard Blumenthal, Richard Durbin, and Elizabeth Warren, well, they co-authored a letter to the president of U of I saying as much. And in it, they urge President Green to reconsider the deal and consider the school's bottom line. They say it could be a hit to the U of I's finances if the public university buys the for-profit school, which isn't exactly turning much of a profit. Idaho could be forced to pay the cost of student loan write-offs, something the senators say happened with the University of Arizona when it bought Ashford University in 2020. Given Phoenix's long record of poor student outcomes, deception of veterans, and entanglements in federal investigations, buying Phoenix could cause great harm to students and taxpayers, not only in Idaho, but also across the country. Specifically, though, it could stain U of I's reputation for quality education, they said. The school has made it clear. Phoenix promises to kick in $200 million if this deal happens. But the senators, well, they believe the liability will go beyond that. And this is just the latest hurdle the school is facing in this deal. Back in June, Idaho Attorney General Raul Labrador filed a lawsuit challenging the legality of the acquisition based on an alleged violation of open meetings laws. Even without the mounting opposition, this deal still has a ton of hoops to jump through before it's even approved. It has to get the approval of creditors for both schools and the U.S. Department of Education. They have to sign off on it, too. All right, several comments today about the lawsuit against Idaho's abortion ban and where it stands right now. Like this one from David. The Idaho Republican Party platform recognizes the need for effective and accessible health care for all individuals. Really, he asks? How does that happen when our OBGYNs go elsewhere? How do we get the whole abortion question on the ballot? I was never asked if I wanted to outlaw abortions in my state. Government by the people, I wonder, says Colleen in Boise. Well, Colleen, maybe that question is answered by what Scott has to say, because it is about getting signatures. And I think instead of having lawyers get involved with our abortion laws, it's time to get the signatures needed to get this on the next ballot so the people of Idaho can decide and not our legislators. That requires you getting signatures from, well, a good percentage of the state to get it as an initiative on the ballot, which could take some time. I prefer to have medical professionals make medical decisions, not right-wing politicians, says Jack. The exodus of our doctors is likely just the beginning. We've heard this too, this mental drain. Healthcare is an important deal, and if people looking to move to Idaho look for healthcare and they don't find it here, they may not move here and take their business elsewhere. Anyone want to bet not one Republican presidential candidate will ever show up in Idaho before the GOP far-right elite caucus in March? We'll see. We'll see tomorrow.